Hello, welcome to 5 Minutes with Gavin Scott. Samuel Langhorne Clemens, whose pen name was Mark Twain, was born in 1835 and raised in Hannibal, Missouri. He was a printer, a riverboat pilot on the Mississippi River, a Civil War soldier, and when he failed to make his fortune in the California gold rush, made his name writing stories about life in the mining camps. When he was growing up, James Fenimore Cooper's famous leatherstocking novels about the American frontier were regarded as classics. Indeed, they still are, especially The Last of the Mohicans. But Twain did not agree, and he was particularly infuriated by a professor of English literature at Yale who said Cooper's The Pathfinder and The Deerslayer stand at the head of Cooper's novels as artistic creations. The defects in both of these, the professor said, are comparatively slight. They are pure works of art. This drove Mark Twain nuts, and in a scathing and very funny essay, he gave examples of how unconvincing he found Cooper's famous novels to be. This is what he wrote. In his little box of stage properties, James Fenimore Cooper kept 6 or 8 cunning devices, tricks and artifices for his savages and woodsmen to deceive and circumvent each other with. And he was never so happy as when he was working these innocent things and seeing them go. A favourite one was to make a moccasined person tread in the tracks of a moccasined enemy and thus hide his own trail. Cooper wore out barrels and barrels of moccasins working that trick. Another stage property that he pulled out of his box pretty frequently was the broken twig. He prized his broken twig above all the rest of his effects and worked at it the hardest. It's a restful chapter in any book of his when somebody doesn't step on a dry twig and alarm everybody for 200 yards around. Every time a Cooper person is in peril and absolute silence is worth $4 a minute, he is sure to step on a dry twig. There may be 100 other handier things to step on, but that wouldn't satisfy Cooper. Cooper requires him to turn out and find a dry twig, and if he can't do it, go and borrow one. But as a former riverboat pilot, Twain reserved his greatest scorn for a scene in The Pathfinder involving a barge, a narrow stream, and an Indian ambush. Here is his analysis. The Indians, having bent a sapling to form an arch over the stream, and 6 of them are hidden in its foliage. The barge is being hauled against the stiff current by a rope, whose stationary end is anchored in the lake, so its rate of progress cannot be more than 1 mile an hour. Cooper describes the barge as about 140 feet long and about 16 feet wide. A low-roofed dwelling on the deck is 90 feet long and 16 feet wide. When the ark arrives at the stream's exit, there is just a foot to spare on each side of the boat. Did the Indians notice that there was going to be a tight squeeze there? Did they notice they could make money by climbing down out of that arched sapling and just stepping aboard when the ark scraped by? No. Other Indians would have noticed these things, but Cooper's Indians never notice anything. Cooper thinks they are marvellous creatures for noticing, but he was almost always in error about his Indians. There was seldom a sane one among them. The idea of the Indians is to drop softly and secretly from the arched sapling as the ark creeps along under it at that rate of 1 mile an hour, and then they are going to butcher the family. It will take the ark a minute and a half to pass under. It will take the 90-foot dwelling a minute to pass under. Now then, what did those 6 Indians do? It would take you 30 years to guess, and even then you would have to give it up, I think. Therefore, I will tell you what the Indians did. Their chief, a person of quite extraordinary intellect for a Cooper Indian, warily watched the canal boat as it squeezed along under him, and when he had got his calculations fine down to exactly the right shade, he let go and dropped onto the cabin and missed, and landed on the stern of the barge. It was not much of a fall, but according to Cooper, it knocked him silly and he lay there unconscious. If the cabin had been 97 feet long, he would have made it. There still remain in the roost 5 more Indians. The boat has passed under and is now out of their reach. Let me explain what the 5 did. You would not be able to reason it out for yourself. Number 1 jumped for the boat, but fell in the water behind it. Then number 2 jumped for the boat, but fell in the water still further behind. Then number 3 jumped for the boat and fell a good way behind. And then number 4 jumped and fell in the water way, way behind. And finally Twain asks, is Cooper's Deerslayer a work of art? And this is his answer. The book has no invention. It has no order, no system, no sequence or result. It has no lifelikeness, no thrill, no stir, no seeming of reality. Its characters are confusedly drawn, and by their acts and words they prove that they are not the sort of people the author claims that they are. Its humour is pathetic, its pathos is funny, its conversations are indescribable, its love scenes are odious, its English a crime against the English language. Counting these out, though, what is left may be art. I think we must all admit that. Mark Twain, not a man, I think, you would wish to annoy.